Militão out. Okay, hear me out on this one because I know that this is going to upset a fair few people. Okay, it's a very, very controversial statement about one of these players who, let's be honest, is idolised by a lot of the fan base. But I am going to state my argument. And if you agree with me, fair enough. If you disagree, let me know. Anyway, let's get to it. So, last season was a bit of a write off for Militão. Obviously, missed the majority of the campaign with cruciate ligament damage. Not his fault, obviously. He came back, and it was really, really obvious that he was struggling. And you'd expect it, to be fair. You cut him a bit of slack, and he's not quite up to the levels that he had before the injury. His pace wasn't the same, and he was making mistakes. And if we look, for example, at the game against Villarreal towards the end of last season, where we drew 4-all, he was at fault for all of the goals. It's just a fact. But you cut him a bit of slack because he's coming back from injury, he's getting those minutes under his belt, and they're trying to ease him back into the team. That's fine. I'm never going to criticise him for that. However, the start of the new campaign, we have to look at it, and no player can be above criticism, and that includes Militão. What I've seen from him so far is something that he's been guilty of prior to the injury, and that is occasionally being a little bit too eager, a little bit too rash coming into his challenges. And that comes to the detriment of his positioning in the team. There are far too many times where he comes steaming out of the defence, completely breaking apart that line. And let's be honest, goes flying into a challenge, normally through the back of the opposition player. He lands himself a cheap yellow card, and we're in trouble again. We're having to defend a set piece, and Militão's on a yellow. Will he get a second? Will we be down to 10? And you've got that problem. And it's a bit of a cycle. And that's happened a couple of times in recent times. This is something that can be addressed, but you need to look at it from a different point of view. So, if I look at the best defences currently in world football, I'm looking at the examples of Manchester City, I'm looking at Arsenal, I'm looking at Liverpool, because all three of those sides have almost watertight defences. But they've got a couple of similarities that we can explore as well. For example, if you look at Liverpool, your starting centre-backs are Virgil van Dijk and Ibrahim Konate. And they are quite different in terms of profiling. Virgil van Dijk is the statesman, isn't he? He's the Rolls Royce. Almost seems like he's just going for a little bit of a stroll in the park. We all know it's not like that. It's positioning, it's how he reads the game, and it's the intelligence that he uses to approach his individual battles. He never looks, for example, second best, even when he's coming up against pace. And we've seen that whenever he's come up against someone like Mbappe or Erling Haaland. He's perfectly capable of having those battles, but he's intelligent about it. Ibrahim Konate, a little bit more aggressive, and you could liken his style a little bit to Rudiger. Nothing wrong with that. I love Rudiger, and I think if I've got a match tomorrow against Erling Haaland, I want Rudiger on Haaland. We've seen the evidence for that. He's an absolutely cracking footballer, brilliant. But there is that alternative. Let's look at another example. Let's look at Arsenal. Arsenal have got the pairing of William Saliba and Gabriel. And again, you've got a similar sort of dynamic. You've got Saliba, who's their Rolls Royce, patrols the back four, very calm in what he does, doesn't get involved unless he has to, heads everything out of the danger area. And then you've got Gabriel, who's got his hands all over the striker. He's being a complete nuisance. Everyone's getting a little bit annoyed with him, but he does his job and he does it very, very well. Sound familiar? Rudiger? Anyone? And it's really interesting because I haven't even talked about City here. I don't need to. I've given you a couple of examples and I've done them quite deliberately because if you look at those teams, if I offered you the chance to change Militão for Saliba, you'd snap my hand off, presumably. William Saliba is what I would consider the best in class. He's the defender that I feel completely transforms our back line. He gives us that defensive solidity. He gives the midfield that security that they can push on a little bit, which is great for us because I want to see Valverde crashing forward, giving the ball into the forwards. You want to see Bellingham liberated so that he can work his magic. But if they've got that security at the back, it makes a world of difference. And the thing is, £100 million on William Saliba is a brilliant investment. Have a look at what Liverpool did when they spent 75 on Van Dijk. He set the defence for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years. An incredible acquisition. Look at Manchester City. They just dropped 100 million on Guardiola last summer. Brilliant acquisition. They're not afraid to do it because they understand the significance of having a player at the back that can give you that security. And okay, fair enough, we might not be able to get Saliba. But look at the other opportunity. Look at Van Dijk. He's a player that is in the last year of his contract. He's available for nothing in a year's time. He is a very, very interesting option. And he is still at the top of his game. Look at how Liverpool have started the season. They are absolutely on fire. But they are super solid at the back. We haven't got that. We've got a defence that, if you analyse it carefully, the positioning is all wrong. It's here, there, and everywhere, and teams are able to get through us. The only difference for us is that the teams that we've faced so far haven't been able to capitalise on those shortcomings. But that won't always be the case. Liverpool are on the horizon. We have to play them in November. We will invariably have to play Manchester City at some point. We've got at least 2 games against Barcelona this season. Those are all stricter challenges, and they are ones where we could potentially be exposed. So I'm well aware that the transfer window has been and gone. It's closed. The earliest we could do business is January, and let's be honest, Madrid never do business in January. So we are looking a little bit more long term. We're looking towards next season. But it is still something to bear in mind, because this is something that we could see be an issue throughout the season. And it does have to be kept in mind so that we can plan forward and plan effectively. Anyway, if you share these concerns, do let me know in the comment section below. And if you did enjoy the content, please consider subscribing to the channel. Take care.